Good day to everyone. This is a two-part video recording based on pace putting. The first part will be on the details of it, the basis of it, the idea of it, and the second part will be putting it into play on a course. We'll choose a course to play, maybe go onto the putting green as well. And then at some point we'll follow it up with somebody else who's going to talk more about break putting, obviously with the pace allowed for too, different methods of break putting also. But this one is fundamentally just going to be on pace putting. So let's get cracking. Just listed out a few points and what the small amount of math is involved in doing this. Obviously. Lots of people do it in different ways. There are a few different formulas out there as well. Nobody is saying that this is the 100% right way to do it. Again, we're no experts, just this tends to work for us. It's a thing that a lot of people struggle with, especially at the beginning. If you've played golf before, it definitely helps because you already know some of the physics of how the ground lies, and WDT have done a really good job in sort of translating that into a maths side of things to sort of replicate it, and it does work a lot. So people can be good at maths, can do this in their heads, don't need a calculator. Others will just ignore this completely and do it by feel, which is, I say, where I started. But this method for me, it's just a bit quicker, reduces errors, and just makes the game a little bit more enjoyable. So the green speeds we're going to use are the 8 most popular given ones. I'm not going to bother with the decimal points. 14, 13, 12, 11, 10, 9, 8, 7. So this is our current formula. Now this will look scary to those who aren't math based. But I'm going to simplify it really easily in the second part when we're actually putting. So don't be scared about this plus that plus algebra plus pi. It's not as complicated as it looks. So there's two parts to the formula. The first part is this: distance plus elevation. Really simple. In our example, it's a 13-foot putt, 2 inches downhill. So in this case, the distance will be 13. Minus elevation of 2 will give us a total of 11. That's the first part of the calculation. That's the one that you'll do on your head as soon as you see the putt that you've got. And the second part, which we multiply the first part by, is 9 divided by the green speed. So in this case, we're on 13 speed greens, and therefore it's 9 divided by 13. So in total, we have two parts of the equation. 13 foot minus 2 is 11. And the second part is 9 divided by 13 is 0.69. All we do is multiply those together. 11 times 0.69 equals 7.6. That is how far to hit in feet on the meter. Some people will work in percentages. Can't really help with that at the minute. I would advise that given this formula, if you're going to use it is in feet, you try and use feet on the meter. It's not that difficult, especially if you've got a 10 to 20 foot putt on the meter. So how this works with each speed, just listed it out. It's the same formula used for all of them. And the key part of this is to remember these numbers on the right hand side, because you're only going to have to use it once. Once you've got it in your mind and you're playing 18 holes on 13 greens, you'll just be doing the first part of the equation, feet minus or plus the elevation, multiplied by whatever it is, the green that you're on. So if you're on 14, it will be 11 multiplied by 0.64. If you're on 11 greens, it will be 11 multiplied by 0.82. If you're on 8 greens, it will be 11 multiplied by 1.12. Once you've get used to that, it's a really easy formula to use. You can have a calculator on the side. If you play on a tablet, you can switch apps. Obviously, if you're on a PC, you can have a little calculator there. There's different ways of doing it, and people with good at maths will just be able to do it in their heads. What I would say is that this formula really works much more for these putts. sort of really good for these, and then pretty good for 9s, and then it sort of slips off slightly on 7 and 8. We're working on something there. I'm sure others have got it down, but what we basically have to do is make a sort of secondary adjustment for when we're on these greens that are really slow, which are rarer than the quicker greens. So that's the basis. Then we talk about the variables, and the reason we talk about the variables is that a formula is as good as a base. There are lots of variables, and basically once you've got your formula down, you'll start to, because you've got a consistent platform, a solid base, you'll be able to start thinking more about these other things that can affect the putts not going in. When you think you've hit it perfect, you know you've got the pace right, and it still misses and goes 4 feet past. There are other factors, and just going to run through these very quickly. First one is the wind. Now this is something that I didn't even consider in the first 4 or 5 months that I played. I really only introduced it after a couple of months, particularly because I like playing in high winds at St Andrews and Pebble Beach and places like that. And so, lots of times you just come up 4 feet short or knock it 6 feet past, and you're like, how is that possible? The wind does have an effect. Generally, I would say only above 15 do I really think about it, unless it's a really downhill putt and it's tailwind. So sort of be careful sort of over 15, 18 miles per hour, particularly when you're on 30 miles per hour at St Andrews and Pebble Beach, where it's very open, there's no trees. There's definitely more effect there, and it can easily be 4 or 5 feet from 30 feet if it's violently into head or tailwind and downhill. So you've got to factor that in when the wind's high. Side winds are a little bit more difficult because you're sort of, if the wind is into the break or with the break, again, these are things that we can follow up in the future, but it's really just a case of learning by seeing it. You know, if a putt that looks like it's breaking a lot and doesn't break because it's into a savage side wind, then you'll start to feel that and just make little adjustments along the way. Slow greens, we've already mentioned the formula doesn't work particularly well with it. For the sake of this exercise, what we're going to do is just say that if you've got an 8 green or a 7 green, if you're going uphill, it will be fairly accurate. You might want to just give it a little bit less. And strangely, that the opposite is that if you're going downhill, you need to give it a little bit more. At some point, I'll putt on 8 greens so we can show that too. I'll try and do that in the second video as well. Firmness. So this is a variable that is more about our character and personality. Some of us like to, I guess, be a bit more controlled and take the break out of it and just be a bit more aggressive generally, which is kind of how I putt. Other people like to sort of gently roll it in. My personal feeling is I don't like leaving a putt short, because if it's short, it's never going to go in ever. So I'm always playing quite aggressively on putts, particularly under sort of 10 or 12 feet. And I guess it's based on the confidence that you have of knocking the 3 or 4 footer back if you miss the putt. Ideally, what you want to do is find a consistent pace that goes about 2 feet past. Drop-offs. This is the nemesis of the formula. So we could have the putt that I've just described on the left-hand page, this 13 foot -2 downhill putt on a 13 green. But if the green after the pin becomes -3, -4, -5 downhill, if you hit it a foot past, be sure it will go 10 foot past. So you've got to watch out for that. If you've got to drop off after the pin, you've got to be a little bit more sensible. I'd be then thinking, on that 13, we're talking about 7.6. If there's a drop off afterwards, I'll be reducing that to sort of more 6.5, 6.7, particularly if there's tailwind, because you can end up putting it 15 foot past, and you'll look at the formula and go, oh, that doesn't work. But we can't allow for everything within a maths formula. short putts, shorties. So my sort of nemesis is 5.5 downhill breaking on quick greens. For me, the sheet isn't, the formula isn't particularly great for these putts because there's a lot more feel involved, and it's easy to get trapped in between, and it's easy to trust the math too much. But in the example here, if you've got a 5.5 foot downhill breaker on quick greens, and it's, I don't know, 4 cups of break, if it's telling you to only hit it 1 foot, that 1 foot is going to be going sideways at the start, and you're going to have to be aiming about 5 or 6 foot right of the hole, you know, to a cup that's only 3 inches wide. So that at some point you've got to take it into your own hands, and you know that 1 foot putt might become a 3 foot putt, so you can half the break, be a little bit more firm with it, and accept that you might have 3 or 4 feet coming back if you miss it. But if you play it as the 1 footer, as per the formula, going to be very, very hard to hole it aiming so far away. The only time I'll really do that is when it's sort of 8 or 9 feet and it's a massive break and it's telling you to hit it 2 or 3 feet. It's very hard to hit that firm when you know it's going to be 15 foot past. So then you really have to sort of move your aim miles away to just basically dribble it towards the hole. Last thing, this is a base. There are lots of variables as we talked above, but using this should reduce the big errors, which is what we're trying to achieve. Nothing worse than driving par 4 and 3 putting, putting it on in 2 on a par 5 and 3 putting that, putting it to 6 feet and 3 putting from there for bogey. So we're really just trying to take out all the errors so that we can make the best of our good shots without dropping shots along the way. And what will happen is you get more confident, you've got a consistent base, so the pace will always be the same that you're hitting pretty much within a foot. And there you see the breaks more because they happen more regularly, and it just it sort of turns the vicious circle of putting into a positive circle because you're used to seeing the right pace rather than mentally thinking, oh, it's about 6 feet, or maybe it's 5, or shall I hit 7? You know, you're never going to get consistent lines, even if you read the putt perfectly, if you're always sort of flitting between one number and another. So, you know, it gives a really good base. You'll start holding more putts from sort of 10 to 15 feet, and suddenly a few 20-footers drop. And then, you know, all of a sudden now I'm like, from 30 feet, I'm thinking about holding it. I'm not thinking about how I make sure I 2-putt it. That's the best I can explain. The last point I just want to say for myself is I'm a field player for everything, as you may have seen in the other videos, in terms of aim, not using grids or rulers or anything else. And I don't necessarily 100% like using the formula and maths for the putting because I want to play the game as golf is, I guess. But if you're trying to succeed, playing a lot of people who are using maths, rulers, grids, and everything else, is you're asking a lot of your field to be as good as you need to be on all aspects. And the putting is the one thing that I really see, because it's such a small target that you're aiming at. It's important to have the best tools possible to be able to make the most putts. So that's it. I hope that's not too complex on the formula side of things, and everyone understands sort of what I'm trying to say on the variables side of things. And the only way really to put it into play is to go and play some holes so that we can see it, and I'll do some calculations. So that's part 1. I hope everyone gets something useful from that. Again, everybody does it differently. This is just a suggestion for those who struggle with putting as it is. Thanks and goodbye, and see you in a bit.